For 1,000 years, the ship slept beneath the red sands of Turian 6. No one knew where it came from or what secrets it held. Every alien who touched it said the same thing: dead. No power, no hum, no glow, just an empty shell, forgotten. But Ryla had always been curious. She was young, sharp-minded, and a bit too bold for her own safety, as an apprentice researcher for the Terion Science Guild. She was not allowed near the relic, but she often sneaked close, climbing over dunes to just stare at it. It looked like a giant metallic claw, half buried in the sand, with black glass windows and strange carvings along the edges. One day, she stood near the ship again when her senior instructor, Master Cleeth, walked over, still obsessed with that thing. Kay said, shaking his head. "It's not a thing," Ryla replied. "It's a message. We just haven't figured it out yet." Cleeth laughed. "A message that no one in 1,000 years could read." "Please. But maybe?" "The message was never meant for us," Ryla whispered. Later that same day, the guild received a visitor, a human, tall and dusty from the desert walk. He wore a pilot jacket and had a calm but tired face. His name was Jackson. "Hail," he introduced himself as a freelance pilot looking for work. The guild ignored him at first. What use was a human pilot on a world like Terion? But then someone made a joke. "If you're so skilled," human Cleeth laughed, "why don't you try waking the old beast in the desert?" Everyone chuckled, except Ryla. She watched Jackson closely, to everyone's shock. He simply nodded. "All right," he said. "Show me." They led him through the dust plains. Winds howling and sun beating down, the ship sat there as always, silent. Lifeless, ancient. Jackson walked up to it slowly, placing his hand on the outer surface. It was cold, then warm. The carvings lit up beneath his fingers. A soft hum began to rise from under the sand. A blue pulse ran along the ship's surface, like veins coming alive. Everyone jumped back in fear. "What did you do?" shouted one of the researchers. "I just touched it," Jackson said, confused himself. Ryla stepped closer, her heart racing. "Try the panel on the side," she said, pointing to a square door none of them could ever open. Jackson placed his palm on it, and with a hiss, it slid open. Inside was a staircase made of floating metal steps. Glowing faintly, the crowd gasped. "This isn't possible," Cleeth whispered. "It chooses who enters," Ryla said slowly. "And it chose him." Jackson looked back at them. "You guys coming in?" he asked, but no one moved. Ryla swallowed her fear and stepped forward. "I'm going," she said. Cleeth tried to stop her, but she brushed past him and joined the human. Together, they descended into the belly of the ship. As they walked deeper, the walls lit up with ancient lights. Symbols danced around them, reacting to Jackson's presence. The air was breathable. The ship was waking up. Ryla looked at the human beside her. "You're not just a pilot, are you?" she asked. Jackson shrugged. "I never touched anything like this before." "But it knows you," she said, her voice trembling. "And now the entire planet will want to know why." At the heart of the ship, they entered a large chamber, floating. In the center was a glowing orb, spinning slowly. It showed stars, galaxies, and a small glowing mark Terion 6. The ship was not only a vessel, it was a map, a weapon, and maybe even something more. Suddenly, alarms rang across the guild station above. Sensors picked up something the ship was broadcasting. It was calling out to something or someone out there in space, and as the ship pulsed with life, Ryla felt a chill. What if waking it up was not a discovery, but a warning? The past had been buried in dust, but now that dust had been swept away, and secrets long forgotten were rising back into the light. To Ryla, one thing was clear. This human had just changed everything. The sun had barely risen over the sands of Terion 6, but news had already spread like wildfire. The ancient ship had awakened, and Worset had chosen a human. Elders from across the region arrived at the site, their robes dragging through the red dust, eyes filled with doubt and disbelief. High Priestess Valen of the Knowledge Circle touched the glowing ship and quickly pulled her hand away. "Still cold to us," she whispered, frowning. Only Jackson had entered it. Only Jackson had touched its heart. Ryla stood beside the human, silent and nervous. She had slept barely an hour, her mind spinning. She had seen the ship react too. Him follow his movements, open for his touch. Display maps through his presence. The guild now treated him as something unnatural. The council gathered quickly, inside a temporary metal tent. Lit by red and blue lanterns, the elders questioned him like a criminal. "Did you build it? Are you an agent of some hidden species? Were you sent here to control?" U.S. Jackson simply sat with a calm face, sipping water from his cracked canteen. "I told you already," he said. "I don't know anything about this ship. I just flew cargo on Earth and took odd jobs in the colonies." But they didn't believe him, especially Master Cleeth, whose voice rose above the others. Lies. There must be something in his blood. He must be connected to the ancients. Ryla finally spoke, her voice clear and strong. He didn't ask for the ship. The ship called to him. Silence filled the room. That was the first time someone had said it aloud. The ship chose him. After the council ended, Jackson walked with Ryla back to the ship. Crowds had formed, standing far away in fear and awe. Some threw stones at his shadow. Others whispered words like curse, invader, and chosen one. "I didn't ask for any of this," Jackson said quietly. "I know," Ryla replied, walking beside him. "But maybe the ship remembers. Something even your people forgot." They reached the ramp of the UFO. As Jackson stepped forward, the ship's lights glowed warmly. When Ryla followed, the glow dimmed slightly, but did not shut her out. Together, they entered once more. This time, something new happened. A soft hum filled the air, and panels along the walls slid open. Dozens of floating objects hovered before them, devices, tools, even what looked like weapons. The ship was offering them knowledge. Jackson reached for one of the floating orbs the moment his fingers touched it. A beam of light shot into his eyes. Ryla gasped, but Jackson didn't scream. He stood still, breathing slowly, his eyes glowing with symbols Ryla couldn't understand. When the light faded, Jackson blinked and looked at her eye. "I understand some of it now," he said, surprised. "It showed me how to connect with the controls, how to think in its language." "Language," Ryla whispered, stepping closer. "Yeah," he said slowly, "it doesn't use words. It uses feelings, images, memories." Like dreaming while awake, suddenly, the floor beneath them shifted. The ship was responding, preparing something. They walked toward what seemed to be the cockpit, though cockpit was the wrong word. It wasn't a pilot seat, it was more like a throne. Ryla stopped, her breath caught in her throat. "Jackson, this ship, it wasn't just meant to be flown," she said, her voice trembling. It was meant to be led. As Jackson approached the throne, the metal around it pulsed blue and green. He reached out, hesitant, and the ship pulled him forward. The moment he sat down, the entire vessel hummed like a living creature waking from a long sleep outside. The sandstorm that had hovered far off the horizon suddenly changed direction. The wind curled away from the ship as if fearing its return. Inside, walls lit up, displaying star maps and battle records. The ship's voice no, its spirit spoke. Directly to Jackson, pilot acknowledged. Connection restored. Command level, human confirmed. Ryla stood frozen. It had never responded like this, not for her people, not for their scientists, not for anyone in 1,000 years, only for him. "Why you?" she asked quietly. Jackson didn't answer right away. He placed his hand on a panel near the throne and closed his eyes. The ship responded by showing a memory not his, but its, a past war. A human-like figure flying it through burning stars, fighting an enemy so dark that even space itself seemed to twist away from it. Then the pilot fell, and the ship crashed, waiting for someone. Someone with the same soul, someone who still believed. Jackson opened his eyes slowly. It wasn't just waiting for any human, he said softly. It was waiting for the one who still dares to care. Ryla felt something stir in her chest. Fear, yes, but also wonder. This wasn't just history waking up. This was the future, shaking the dust off its shoulders. And now the galaxy would soon know the pilot had returned, and the ship had chosen its human king. The ancient ship was alive now. Its walls glowed softly like a heartbeat. Every step Jackson and Ryla took echoed deeper into its hollow body. But this time, the ship was guiding them. Light strips along the floor lit up in patterns, showing the way doors that were once sealed tight now slid open quietly as they approached. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Not in temperature, but in feeling. It's like the ship is warning us, Ryla said, her voice soft. Jackson nodded. It wants us to come, but not without respect. They passed rooms filled with floating machines, old control stations, and glowing blue vines that seemed to pulse with energy. But then they reached a tall, narrow corridor that ended in a thick door. It was darker than the rest, almost black, and smooth like stone. Jackson placed his hand on it. The ship didn't open it right away. Instead, a light scanned him again head to toe. A voice spoke, but it wasn't loud. It whispered in his mind. Core access confirmed. Welcome back, pilot. With a hiss, the door opened. Ryla held her breath. She had studied this part of the ship from old maps and legends. No one had ever entered it. They called it the Forbidden Core because it was said to hold the ship's heart and its truth. Inside was a massive circular chamber. The ceiling rose high like a dome, glowing with stars. In the center floated a sphere, larger than both of them, spinning slowly. It was covered in symbols, like language, but a life-changing shape with every turn. Jackson stepped forward, and the symbols moved toward him. They floated off the orb and wrapped around his body like light. Ryla reached out in fear. Are you okay? Jackson didn't answer. His eyes had turned silver, reflecting the lights. Images flashed before his eyes. Thousands of them. He saw a world that looked like Earth, but older. He saw humans with strange suits flying these ships across galaxies. And he saw war. Dark creatures floating like black smoke with claws, tearing through planets. He saw other alien races, Ryla's ancestors among them, standing beside humans in battle. He saw the final battle where the last pilot, who looked just like Jackson, crashed the ship on Tarion 6 to hide it from the enemy. Then, darkness, sleep, and finally, Jackson. The vision ended. He gasped, stumbling back. Ryla caught him. What did you see? He looked at her, sweat on his brow. It wasn't just a ship, he said, breathing hard. It was part of a fleet built to defend life, and humans were once its pilots, guardians. Ryla stared at him, shocked. You're saying your kind flew these things before? Not just flew them, Jackson said. They died in them, trying to protect the galaxy from something ancient and evil. The orb in the center changed color, turning red. Warning lights blinked across the walls. A voice spoke again. Now? Louder. Threat detected. Hostile signal traced. Time to impact. 72 hours. Ryla spun around. What does that mean? Jackson looked at the orb, his voice calm but heavy. They're coming back. The enemy that destroyed the fleet, outside the ship. Alarms began sounding across the science base. Guild members ran in panic, not understanding what had triggered the sensors. But deep in the Forbidden Core, Ryla and Jackson now knew. The ship hadn't just woken up to be studied. It had woken up to warn. The ship remembers. Jackson whispered, It remembers everything. He looked at the orb again. It was now displaying a galaxy map, thousands of stars. But only one was blinking red Sirian 6. The enemy knew they had found the ship again. Ryla touched the wall. Then we have to tell the council, prepare the defenses. Jackson shook his head. They won't believe us. They don't even trust me. She nodded slowly. Then we don't wait for them. She turned to him. A fierce look in her eyes. We fly this ship. We learn everything it can do and we fight. Jackson looked at the throne behind the orb. It was glowing now, waiting. He took a deep breath. Then we start now, he said, together. They stepped forward, human and alien. Two strangers pulled together by something older than history. And as the ship's heart pulsed again, the stars above them shifted. The past had returned, and with it so had War 3 suns rose over Terrian 6, painting the sky orange and gold. But the beauty meant nothing to Ryla. She stood on the highest tower of the science base, her eyes locked on the horizon above her. The ancient ship hovered silently in the sky, live, glowing and aware. Jackson was inside, connected with it more deeply than ever. The core had shown them everything: star maps, battles, and now a countdown, 72 hours. That was how long they had until the old enemy returned. Not raiders, not pirates, but something far worse. Something ancient, dark, and without mercy. The council still refused to act. They are myths, said Master Cleith, old war stories to scare young ones. But Ryla had seen the enemy in Jackson's visions. She had felt the fear through the ship's memories. These weren't myths, they were monsters, and they were real, in the command center. Alarms suddenly lit up. Unidentified signals had entered the outer range of the planet Skywatch. Fast, large, and silent. The signals didn't respond to any hails or warnings. Jackson rushed in from the ship, his face pale. "They're here earlier than we thought," he said. "They sent scouts, testing us." Ryla grabbed her gear and followed him outside. The air trembled as the enemy crafts broke through the clouds black. Needle-shaped ships with no windows, like knives cutting through the atmosphere. Terrian's defense ships launched immediately, dozens of sleek alien crafts rising to meet the threat. But the moment they got close, the black ships moved faster than anyone expected. Their weapons were invisible, no beams, no fire, just silence. Then, destruction. One by one, the defense ships exploded into pieces. No screams, just flashes of light and silence. The science base shook as the enemy passed overhead. Panic filled the halls. Guards ran, elders shouted, and everyone suddenly realized this was no joke. The enemy was real, and they had no chance. Until the ancient ship rose higher, Jackson stood inside, hands on the glowing panels. Ryla sat beside him in the co-pilot chair, her heart pounding. "Do you trust me?" Jackson asked, his voice calm but intense. Ryla looked at him and nodded. "With my life," she said. The ship's engines roared not with sound, but with power. Waves of light exploded from beneath it as it launched into the sky, the ground. Cracked sand flew everywhere, for the first time in centuries. The ancient craft was flying again, not for war, but for protection. They flew fast, faster than light itself. Jackson didn't use controls, he thought, and the ship moved. The enemy crafts turned to attack, but the UFO danced through them like a ghost. Plasma bursts, curved lasers, and blinding shields activated as the ship defended itself. Each time Jackson guided it, the ship reacted faster, smarter, deadlier. It remembered its purpose, and so did he. Ryla watched in awe. This human, who was once seen as a nobody, was now piloting the most powerful machine in the sky. But it wasn't just him, it was them. The ship responded to their unity, to their shared will to protect. They hit one of the enemy scouts, and it burst into dark gas. Another followed, then another. The sky began to clear. Alien children and mothers watching from below screamed not in fear, but in hope. Back at the science base, the elders stood frozen. No one spoke. Even Master Cleeth stared in silence as the ancient ship fought for them. For the first time, their pride melted into shame. "They protected us," whispered an old alien. "And we didn't believe them." Inside the ship, Jackson looked at Ryla. "That was just the beginning," he said. "The scouts are gone, but the main fleet. It's still coming?" "How big?" she asked. Jackson hesitated. "Thousands of ships. And they're not just after this planet. They're after the ship, the knowledge, the history. Everything." Ryla looked out at the stars. "If they get it, they'll destroy everything the ancients fought for." Jackson nodded. "Then we don't let them." The ship suddenly lit up brighter. New doors opened within the cockpit, showing ancient weapons, hidden modes, and sleeping tech waiting to be awakened. The ship was no longer just a machine. It was a guardian. And it had chosen its new pilots. Ryla smiled faintly, placing her hand next to Jackson's on the panel. "Let's give them something they'll never forget." And far above them, in the cold darkness of space, the enemy's main fleet entered. Warp their destination, Tarian 6. Their mission: erase the last memory of resistance, but they didn't know what was waiting for them. Not just a ship, not just a human, but a team that would fight with everything they had to protect life, history, and the future itself. The sky over Tarian 6 was no longer peaceful. Smoke drifted across the horizon. Flames burned in broken hangars, and the once proud defense fleet lay in pieces. In the middle of this chaos, the ancient ship hovered silently above the science base. Its silver-blue body shimmered under the morning sun. But inside it was preparing for war. Jackson sat in the command throne, eyes focused. Ryla stood beside him, reading the ship's updates. "The enemy fleet has changed direction," she said. "They're sending a probe toward the capital." Jackson clenched his jaw. "We can't let them map the planet," he said. "If they scan our cities, they'll know where to strike first." He placed his hand on the panel. The ship responded instantly. Humming as lights ran across the walls, new panels opened, revealing weapon systems and flight controls. "Is the ship ready?" Ryla asked. Jackson smiled slightly. "It says it's been ready for 1,000 years." The ship rose higher, cutting through the clouds. Its engines released no fire, no noise, only glowing trails of blue energy. It moved like a ghost, fast, sharp, perfect. This was no ordinary flight. This was a test, a first strike as they reached the upper atmosphere. The enemy probe came into view. It was small, shaped like a blade, and scanning everything in sight. "Let's make sure it doesn't report back," Jackson said. He gave a mental command, and the ship obeyed. In seconds, the targeting systems locked in. A pulse of light shot out, no sound, no flash, just speed. The probe exploded instantly, vanishing into space dust. Ryla blinked. "That was fast." "The ship doesn't waste time," Jackson replied. "It moves like it already knows the outcome." But that was only the beginning. Suddenly, 6 enemy fighters dropped from orbit. They had been watching, waiting. Now they swarmed toward the ship, claws out, engines screaming. "They're trying to trap us," Ryla said. Jackson didn't panic. He closed his eyes, and the ship moved on instinct, diving down, spinning, dodging every beam. Enemy lasers passed by inches from their hull, but the ancient ship danced through them like wind through trees. Inside, the ship began to glow brighter, not from damage, but excitement. It remembered battle. It wanted to fight again. Jackson pushed forward. The ship's wings expanded, revealing hidden cannons. In one smooth movement, it circled the enemy formation. Then it fired 3 quick bursts. One ship exploded. The second followed. The third tried to flee, but the ship chased it down and destroyed it before it could scream for help. The remaining 3 enemies pulled back, but Jackson wasn't finished. He chased them through the clouds. Faster than sound, Ryla looked out the window, eyes wide with awe. No ship from Terion can move like this. She whispered. Jackson nodded. That's because this ship thinks, it learns with every move. He took the ship above the clouds, where the stars could be seen, there in the quiet sky. He stopped the ship and looked ahead. He felt something distant, but coming. Closer. He turned to Ryla. We have less than 2 days, he said. The main fleet is moving faster, I think. They know I've connected with the ship. Ryla frowned. Why would that matter to them? Because the last time they lost, it was to a human pilot, he replied. She looked at him with new eyes, not just as a visitor or a friend, but as something rare, something ancient. Returned, the ship spoke suddenly, its voice calm, deep, and echoing inside their minds, training mode complete. Pilot integration, 89%. Combat protocols ready. Jackson leaned back in the throne. He had passed the test. But now the real battle would begin. He looked at Ryla. We need to teach your people how to defend themselves. We need to show them what's coming, Ryla. Agreed. We have the ship, the knowledge, and the will. We just need time, but time was running out. On a hidden screen inside the ship, a red mark flashed again and again. Thousands of dark enemy vessels were entering warp, each one carrying weapons. Soldiers and death. But they weren't coming for just one planet. They were coming to a race. Everything that remembered the old war, and this ship was their first target. As Jackson flew back toward the base, the people below looked up. For the first time, they didn't see a threat. They saw a protector. The test flight had turned into a message the enemy was coming, but so was their resistance. The sky above Terion 6 had changed. It no longer felt like the home Ryla knew. It was darker, now heavier, as if the stars themselves were afraid of what was coming. Every satellite in orbit had gone silent. Every space scanner showed the same image, an enormous wave of enemy. Ships entering the system, thousands of them, black and sharp like teeth, moving in silence, but ready to devour everything in their path. Inside the ancient ship, Jackson stood at the center of the command core. The ship was glowing brighter than ever. Panels floated around him, showing enemy movements, defense lines, and projected casualties. This is it, Jackson said softly. Ryla stood beside him, fully geared and calm. She was no longer just a curious alien girl. She was now a warrior, a co-pilot of something greater than herself. She looked at the screens, heart heavy. If we fall, the planet falls. Jackson nodded. Then we don't fall. The ship rose through the sky. Slow and steady, all of Terion watched from below millions of eyes. Children clung to their parents, elders prayed, and soldiers stood frozen. No one believed a human and a girl could stop what was coming. But the ship did, and that was enough. As the ship entered the upper atmosphere, they saw it, a black wall of enemy vessels filling the space like a disease. It wasn't just numbers, it was intent. These creatures weren't here to conquer, they were here to erase. Jackson's fingers hovered over the command panel. He didn't press anything, he thought. The ship responded instantly. Weapons activated, shields pulsed, and old defense systems sparked back to life, targeting locked. The ship's voice echoed, permission to fire. Ryla looked at Jackson. He gave a single nod. Fire. From the ship's belly, a beam of light brighter than the sun burst forward. It cut through 3 enemy ships like paper. Explosions rocked the sky, but the enemy kept coming. They swarmed toward the ancient craft, hundreds at a time, but the ship danced through them, rolling, diving, spinning. Jackson focused. Every move of his mind became a command. Every emotion, fear, rage. Love fed the ship's core. Ryla fired secondary, cannons hitting ships on their flanks. She wasn't as fast as Jackson, but she was learning, and the ship was teaching her. Below them, the planet shook. Pieces of burning metal fell through the clouds. The capital's shield struggled to stay active. The Council of Elders had finally issued an evacuation order, but it was already too late for some cities. Too many, Ryla shouted. There's too many of them. Jackson's jaw tightened. He pushed deeper into the ship's systems. And the ship answered, a new weapon activated. A rotating ring rose from the top of the ship, charged with white-hot energy. It hummed for a moment, then exploded outward. In a silent blast, hundreds of enemy ships lost control. Their systems fried, their metal twisted. They fell like broken stars toward the planet below. The people on the surface saw it. And for the first time, they cheered. But victory wasn't free. Enemy fighters crashed into the ancient ship's shields. Sparks flew inside the left wing. Pulsed red damaged, Ryla. Reroute power to stabilization thrusters. Jackson said quickly, I'm on it. She shouted, slamming her hand on the panel. The ship jerked, nearly losing balance. But held strong. They're targeting our core now, Ryla said. They know it's the heart. Jackson narrowed his eyes. Then let's remind them why this ship was feared. He pulled up an ancient file marked Last Stand, a forgotten combat sequence buried in the ship's memory. The ship warned him, danger level, absolute. Jackson smiled. Do it anyway. A light covered the ship. Its entire body changed, panels shifted. Wings split open wider. New weapons unfolded, massive cannons, rotating drones, and even energy blades. Ryla stared in awe. It's transforming. This is how the last pilot saved the galaxy. Jackson said, and now we do the same. The ship flew faster, cut deeper, hit harder. Enemy ships fell by the hundreds. The sky turned into a graveyard, but one Jackson. And Ryla refused to die, and hours passed like minutes, and slowly. The tide turned, the enemy fleet began to retreat. Their leaders realized they couldn't win. Not against this ship, not against them. Jackson and Ryla hovered in space, panting. Sweat ran down their faces, but they were still alive and behind them. So was Terrian 6. Silence returned to the sky above Terrian 6. Smoke from the battle drifted like clouds. Broken pieces of enemy ships floated in orbit like forgotten bones. And in the center of it all, the ancient ship hovered still. Glowing, proud, inside, Jackson sat quietly in the throne. He looked exhausted, his body still shaking. His eyes stared at the stars, not in fear, but in reflection. He had fought harder than ever, and somehow he had survived. Ryla sat beside him, resting her head against the cold metal wall. Her hands trembled from hours of holding controls, but her heart was calm. They had done it. Had defended a planet. They had become the shield, the galaxy. Forgot, down below, the people of Terrian gathered in open fields and rooftops. They looked up, waiting. Some cried, some sang. All of them knew they had been saved, not by armies, but by a single human and the girl who believed in him, later. The ship landed slowly on the golden plains near the capital. A large crowd gathered. Elders, scientists, soldiers, children, everyone was there. When Jackson stepped out of the ship, silence fell across the field, not because of fear, but because they didn't know how to honor him. He was a stranger, a human from a faraway planet, but now he was something more. Master Cleeth stepped forward. Head lowered, he had once mocked Jackson, called him weak, unwanted. Now he stood before him, humbled. You didn't just save Terrian, Cleeth said softly. You reminded us what bravery means. Jackson nodded. I didn't do it alone, he said, and looked at Ryla. The crowd turned as she stepped out of the ship, her face shining with pride and dirt. A cheer rose, loud, powerful, endless. but inside Jackson's heart. Something felt strange. The ship was speaking to him again quietly. Its voice no longer sounded like commands or alerts. It sounded like a farewell. That night, Jackson returned to the command chamber. The ship glowed softly like a sleeping guardian. "Why do I feel like it's ending?" he asked. The ship responded with a gentle hum. Mission complete. Purpose fulfilled. Awaiting final command. Ryla entered, hearing the last part. "Final command?" she asked. Jackson looked at her with a heavy heart. "It wants to go," he said. "It wants to return to the stars, maybe find the rest of its kind. They're still out there." Ryla stepped closer, her voice low. "And you?" Jackson didn't answer for a moment. Then he smiled. "It's calling me, but—" "This is your home now," she said, tears building in her eyes. "You protected us. This planet needs you." Jackson gently touched her shoulder. "No, Ryla," he said. "You don't need me anymore. You believed when no one else did. You were brave before I was." He looked at the glowing orb in the center of the ship. "I was just the hand," he whispered. "But you were the heart." The next morning, the skies lit up once again, with war, but with wonder. The ancient ship rose from the plains. Jackson stood in the doorway, looking down at the people one last time. Ryla stood alone in the front of the crowd, her eyes locked on him. "Will I ever see you again?" she called out. Jackson smiled. "I don't know," he shouted back, "but look up every night, and maybe you'll see a light moving across the stars. And you'll know I'm watching too." Then, with a final hum, the ship rose higher, faster than the wind, smoother than light. It vanished into the sky, leaving behind only a soft shimmer. The people of Tyrion fell silent. Then, one by one, they raised their hands to the sky. In respect, he was no longer just a pilot. He was the last pilot of the first race, and the universe had not forgotten him.